Thank you for that.
No, not yep, down to the right. Oh God, sorry, my bad. I'm in their lunch shop. Sorry, my bad. Sorry, keep walking over your shop. Sorry. No, I just don't want to wander for everyone's lunch shops. You want to do that? So we'll come get you. Yeah. And I will send Yasmin out to get you. Yes. Yes. Don't worry about it. Thanks, dude. I appreciate you. No worries. Like, that's all of this. No one's up here.
Oh yeah, that was amazing.
Kind of lucky that we had community center yesterday.
Oh, no worries. Oh, I didn't even see it.
Oh yeah, because it would have been, it was still dark.
Oh, no.
But I figured live just
I'm not worried about lighting. I'm not. I know you are. I still think you can go outside and choose. I did not know that.
You gonna be okay?
I'm just making sure I had it's Roberto. Say Roberto.
Yep.
We're gonna, this is the guy we want to talk to. Yeah. Yeah, my bad. I let the family know that that's bad. You should get a beer. No, we're all messed up. Even at home. Bro, we're all getting hits in different places. Appreciate you.
farklı bir yerden böyle farklı zamanda yayınlanıyor. Yeah, he was so longer than this. There's a lot of complications that
Okay. Okay. I don't know. I was trying to figure out what I think we're gonna be here until 11, and then Central. 11 Central. I know. 11 Central. Then we're gonna go. I think to Anderson Cooper's. Then we're gonna go to Central. And we got all that. Hey, yep. All right, you get another one here.
No worries.
Yep, sure can. Well, it's gonna have it just. Okay, is it too high? Too high? It's not plugged in yet. It's not plugged in yet. Hold on. They think it's too hot. Oh, okay. Hold on. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, I'm right here. Yep, sure do.
I see the families, I see how they're I see Native Americans, women, kids, and those of us who here that define
We are going to hear the largest, most fulsome, best arguments from both sides here. Minnesota going first, basically laying out to Judge Catherine Menendez that what the administration is conducting here goes well beyond what is permissible under the law. They say that there have been up to 4,000 agents amassed in Minnesota, and they say role integration, but that this is so extreme. It is so far beyond what happens in normal times, and again, what is permissible under the law, that it is again trampling on the rights of Minnesotans. I'll note though, Wolf, that the Trump administration denies this. They say that this argument has absolutely no legal basis. Judge Catherine Menendez seems very skeptical of Minnesota's argument in court, saying that she is grappling with this legal question here over the 10th Amendment, and saying that she's having a hard time determining how she is going to have the authority to block Operation Metro Surge as requested by the state of Minnesota. Well, here's a quote directly from court minutes ago. I think it kind of goes without saying that we are in shockingly unusual times. Is again what she said in court, and then she went on to say, I don't know that gives me greater license to craft a remedy in the 10th Amendment. We heard from the Minnesota Attorney General's office, Assistant Attorney General Brian Carter, saying this. The difficulty with the case law in this situation is that the situation is unprecedented in the 250-year history of our country. He went on to say we have never had a federal government amass with essentially an army of 3,000 to 4,000 masked, heavily armed federal agents and sent them into a state and basically stir the pot. But again, well, at this point, Judge Menendez seems quite skeptical of that.
So you want to go inside the trust building,
And then one we go to the bar, or we can see from here, and then
oh, nice. Me too. This is from January. Oh. Yeah, I see. Something I was
Hello. Sure do. Yes. the investigation is ongoing according to the Department of Homeland Security, but what is concerning people here is that local and state officials in Minnesota are being blacked out of that investigation. They are also concerned that, in effect, DHS is investigating itself with assistance from the FBI, which is a federal agency here housed in another department. But both the DHS investigation and the FBI is all under the purview of the Trump administration. And so that is really the point of contention here. What is happening right now is an extraordinary moment here in America because the state of Minnesota is filing a lawsuit against the federal government. That happens all the time. However, what is different here is this. The state of Minnesota is arguing that the federal government's overreach here amounts to an infringement on the state's sovereignty. And so that is what a federal judge here is hearing arguments on. Basically, they're arguing that there are so many immigration agents, that there are up to 4,000 agents who have flooded into the state of Minnesota. We have heard we've heard state leaders call this an invasion, and they say that that goes well beyond what is permissible under the law. The state of Minnesota is not arguing that the federal government has no role in immigration, but instead saying that this is so aggressive, it is putting so much pressure on the state that it is forcing them to act, which is not permissible under the law, and is trampling on the rights of Minnesotans for a long list of reasons. That it is causing disruptions in schools, it is causing disruptions in healthcare. People are not seeking doctor's appointments that have been previously scheduled. The Minnesota prosecutors here arguing that there was one school, for example, where enrollment had dropped 50%, and they're making the argument here that the ripple effect here is forcing Minnesotans to cede some of their rights to live freely here in the state. The Trump administration has a completely different view. They say that this lawsuit by the state of Minnesota is completely warrantless. It has no case law to support it. And at this point, the judge in this case seems highly skeptical of the arguments that the state of Minnesota is making, saying that she did not know in this moment if she had the authority to curtail what the administration is doing under the 10th Amendment, which upholds states, basically a state's freedom amendment. As we move forward, the major question here is how this judge is going to rule, when the judge is going to issue the ruling. It could be today, it could be several days from now. In the meantime, tension here continues. We have seen protest after protest after protest, as we have now seen 3 shootings from immigration agents in about as many weeks here in Minnesota. 2 of those people, American citizens, who witnesses say were simply protesting these ICE actions, and in one case, simply videotaping the actions of immigration agents here. Later today, another novel case. Local law enforcement here wants the ability to investigate this latest shooting. This is the shooting death of a man named Alex Preddy. He's an ICU nurse. He worked at the Veterans Affairs Administration here in the state of Minnesota. The local law enforcement is not being allowed, basically, to conduct its own investigation. As I said before, the federal government has complete control of that investigation. They are now suing to ensure that they can get preserved evidence from that case because they want to conduct their own investigation. On Saturday, a judge issued a temporary restraining order which barred the federal government from tampering with or altering or destroying any of the evidence that they had collected. And again, local law enforcement here, as well as the state of Minnesota's Attorney General, saying that it is absolutely critical that that evidence is preserved so that they can conduct their own investigation. This is completely uncharted territory in both of these hearings, and we will see how these judges rule. But it is an extraordinary moment here in America. Back to you. All right. Okay, so we've got, I think, a 20-minute break. And then, let me think. We have a 20-minute break. Then I have a digital hit. So the digital hits are a little different. They want them off the shoulder and they want kind of wide. So let me put that up here. Yeah, we do them off the camera. Yeah, so they'll handle all that. So we have done it, we can't do it on this. So they just want the look to be kind of wide, and they want it to be like, you know, some room in it. They like the idea.
Yeah. Okay.
So I think we have a 10:45 and 11.
I think we should like
Then
tear down, get to
we'll have to go down to another location.
and
I
then
think.
you got to get into our next location.
No, actually another.
I've just reached out to the organization.
Oh,
I found an article about what happened. It could be a good influence.
yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, yeah. See. He's been out there a while, right?
Yeah. We don't need that.
We don't need that much. Like we need to get going.
Yeah.
No, exactly. No, I don't have any.
Just like just didn't want to go with too much on that until you knew, like,
What exactly it is? Yeah. No, I think
it's so unclear. Like, I don't know if you post on video,
yes. A little bit. I know, but that's a question.
and some like, okay,
Yeah. Well, no, the thing is, if it's under seal, then it's under seal. That's all you can say is charges that you don't know because it's under seal.
but they were like, I don't know, I just heard one thing.
I think you gotta I'm gonna keep it to you until I know.
I mean, there's such an interesting larger see all of them. Without being there. Argentina's keys.
I don't know. Actually,
It's that, but I'm also like,
It's an interesting.
by the time you live,
Yeah. We're gonna incorporate it toward the green file for the day. It's just some elements. We're doing a map so we're just flopping around all the time. So I think we'll include it.
are you heading to St. Paul?
Right now, no. Is there something going on in St. Paul? I don't.
There's, I think that's state, and that is.
Yeah.
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 To be local investigators to be involved.
Okay.
I think
No, we're gonna.
It can't be everywhere. So.
We're probably gonna zip over to the hotel with the I'm saying and we're probably gonna zip over to that section that's featured in the label at times where people are it's become a headquarters for case of patrols or this. So we're trying to get to solve it. It's a sex shop. It's called Soap. Yes, we're gonna go over there. There we go. So that's what we're gonna do. That's our plan.
Yeah, but when you're only one person.
We have a French team here, but actually two French teams.
Oh, you live with them, Marie.
Yes,
Yeah,
Marie
she's
Sunday,
working with us. Yeah.
yeah, Marie Sunday. So Marie Sunday, Louis, and then no, absolutely not. No, it's she's working with us on the English side, and she's on the French side. I'm super happy.
Good luck.
Thanks, you too. Yeah, I know. We're all on the same bus.
Get any other stuff
Oh, I appreciate that.
that case or whatever.
Thank you. Appreciate that. I'll let you know. I'll be in contact. Thanks.
Good luck.
Thanks, you too. It's a really nice shot. So it's very. All right.
How are we gonna feed the fire?
Yeah, we'll feed in the car. Yeah, yeah. Kind of. Can we bring the car here? No. Yeah. It looks like something's gonna.
Sure, don't do it. They're at home. Oh, they're at home. You can't do it. Because if I had asked that question, I have to go because we were both out that night. Yeah. You gotta go on the road. Hey, look, this is Detroit. Hey, look, that will be like. And then what you do is you can take your car and buy whatever you want.
No, the dog freaked out as soon as the door opened. Here's your dead battery. I'll keep it in my pocket. So we can charge it at the car.
No, it was at the end of the year, so it was like 2 weeks.
Oh, do you? That's fine. That's fine. We'll figure it out in there. I'll repeat it. Good. I'm just thinking. I'm processing what we got to do next. We got to feed that so we can get it into the system. Yeah. And then I think we go to the hotel to just get some daytime shots. Yeah. And then I think we zip over to the. Yeah. Okay. Perfect. We're gonna go to the search shop after that. Smithfield. Thank you. Oh my god, that's awesome.
Oh wait, it's rough. Wait, I'm doing this wrong. Down.
Yeah, did the middle one.
Oh. There we go.
Okay, 1300 NN is killed, so we're good.
Perfect. Yeah, they'll be okay.
Oh yeah, they're fine.
Yeah. Your hit covers everything.
Yeah.
Okay, these two are done. Your bag, yeah? Don't forget your bag.
Yeah, I'll get my bag. Yeah.
And the
Oh,
battery
thanks.
isn't yours, right? Those gloves? Pablo.
Oh, no worries. No, no worries. You're good. You're good. Don't worry. Also, James, have you eaten anything yet? I want you guys.
Oh yeah,
to
no,
eat
I
something.
had 3 mini food grades.
Okay, good.
I had some food too.
Okay.
And I've got chips and plenty for everyone. If we want to live off something. I got First, I got James sick in DC. Now I broke the handle on this.
Oh my goodness.
That was freaking everything here.
That's a good sign.
Right? So guys, they're gonna have to bring me to DC and get me a job there so I can fix the handle.
There you go.
That is it. This is how this goes. Have everything.
You do, yeah.
Awesome.
Probably wouldn't do that. Water into an engine. Can't spray on.
Do you want my gloves, by the way?
No, because we're just walking the car.
Okay. Please though, I'm asking for one. Please. Keep checking with you. I'm asking you.
You guys take care. Nice
Thanks a lot. Guys, take care. Good luck today. Thank you.
It's a nice city. I've been here before. First time I went to it, it's like yeah, September here is.
Hopefully next time we'll come back in September then. Take care.
No questions whatsoever.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Same thing.
Nope. It's all good. It is live.
Yesterday, I basically like put the camera right in front of my man and put the camera outside. Walk down the shop. That's all I did.
Do I found a parking spot too.
Oh, you should put your chart.
Hi. Yep. Okay. Okay. Can you go a little wider? Wider. That's okay. I don't have that.
Do you like the sunny place?
Oh, okay.
Really? I've got older electrodes.
So they want even wider. Even wider. All right. Okay. All good. All right, great. You guys want me to take some off? a really novel case here. This is the state of Minnesota suing the Trump administration because the state of Minnesota believes that the Trump administration is infringing on their 10th Amendment rights. Basically, they are arguing this, that Operation Metro Surge, which DHS says is the largest immigration crackdown ever, is infringing on the rights of Minnesotans. They are arguing that the Trump administration's massive crackdown that it is so aggressive, it is so invasive, that it goes well beyond what is permissible under the law. The state of Minnesota is notably not arguing that the federal government has no role in federal immigration. Rather, they are arguing, again, that they want the Trump administration's immigration posture here to go back to what it was prior to this surge of agents. Let me tell you a little bit about Operation Metro Surge. This has been going on actually since the beginning of December, but it ramped up at the end of December when we saw thousands of agents prepare to come to Minnesota. It was at the beginning of January when we learned that there were boots on the ground. This immigration enforcement crackdown expanded from 1,000 agents to 3,000 agents. Now, the Minnesota Attorney General's office is arguing that they believe there are up to 4,000 agents who have descended on the state. They are making this argument to Judge Catherine Menendez that the operation here is targeting U.S. citizens. They also say it is wreaking havoc on schools. It is wreaking havoc on protesters who say they are being identified and targeted by federal law enforcement. And then further, they're arguing that it is having health impacts for Minnesotans, saying that people are too afraid to leave their homes, even to go to massively important doctor's appointments, pointing to one case where they say someone had what would have been a preventable amputation because they were so afraid to go to court. This is a quote from the Minnesota Attorney General's office in court minutes ago. The administration is not content with the rule of law. That's according to the Minnesota Assistant Attorney General, Brian Carter. They are not content with letting the courts work this stuff out. Instead, they put violence on the streets of Minnesota to get what they want. This case is taking on a critical importance after the shooting death of Alex Preddy. And I think notably, this case was actually filed after the shooting death of Renee Good. That was January 7th. This case was filed January 12th. Now it is taking on heightened meaning here, and the Minnesota Attorney General's office is basically saying enough is enough, and this cannot continue, and are asking a federal judge to intervene. The Trump administration believes that these legal arguments have absolutely no merit. They say they have absolute authority to enforce federal immigration law, that President Trump has the authority to continue to allow agents operating and carrying out what was a campaign promise, that this was what the Trump administration, what President Trump had run on, that this is what voters elected him to do. He does have the authority to continue to do that, and that is the argument simply that they are making to Judge Catherine Menendez. She seems quite skeptical of Minnesota's argument here. She said in court not long into the hearing that she was concerned that she had even the authority to curtail Operation Metro Surge under the 10th Amendment. So we will see how this hearing continues. It began about an hour and 45 minutes ago. They are now on a 15-minute break, and we expect that this hearing could continue all morning. Later today, another absolutely critical hearing as local officials here sue the administration to preserve evidence surrounding the Alex Preddy shooting. Here's the background on that. Alex Preddy was shot and killed earlier this week on Saturday morning. Initially, the expectation was that local officials would be able to process the scene as they had done in the last two shootings committed by immigration agents. However, this time, the Bureau of Criminal Apprehension, which is a state agency, was not able to process the scene. Local officials were completely boxed out from the beginning of that investigation. Federal officials taking complete control of the scene and the evidence initially. Now, local officials are suing to preserve that evidence to ensure that it is not altered, tampered with, or destroyed. And the Trump administration firing back, saying that you're effectively saying they're insulted by the insinuation that they would tamper with evidence. But it is a critical moment here because there's so much distrust right now between local officials and the federal officials. And so now they're going to courts to referee these fights that we have seen starting to grow and grow and grow, and are now taking heightened meaning in the aftermath of Alex Preddy's shooting death on Saturday morning. So we will see how these judges rule. We are keeping a very close watch on it. News today, we now know that border czar Tom Homan is coming to Minnesota. We are working to find out details about who he is meeting with and what he is going to do. But that is a notable moment because Tom Homan is a well-respected, longtime ICE agent. And so we'll see if the posture here changes, if the operations change, and if that is at the behest of Tom Homan. And we will also be watching to see if Customs and Border Patrol Commander Greg Rubino takes a lesser role now that a higher ranking official is coming into the state. Thank you for watching the CNN app. I'm Whitney Wild in Minneapolis. What? Oh, yeah. Yes. All right. Okay, now we've got 11-minute break. And no, we are doing it. Did they just cancel it? No, that was the digital adjustment. Yeah, that's okay. No, that's this one. Then we'll do something else. That's a 30-second thing later. Bill can shoot that. Yeah. That's okay. All right, that's why I wanted to do that. I do.
What's that? I got it. He was literally charged in 100% in the car, full.
When you get battery charged, you got a cable, one on the table.
Yeah, I got both in the car. I've got time. Yeah. I'm good. I got something back. Thank you very much.
1, 2, 3. Hi.
I have no idea.
Okay. Okay, sounds good. All right, we're clear. They're not taking us. All right, keep it now. Yeah, exactly. Let's. All right, now we need to go to Anderson Cooper. I'm gonna go upstairs and have a coffee from a shop like down the way here. All right, so I guess just pack up. Bill's coming down in a minute, and then he'll tell you where to go. I don't exactly know where the live shop location is. Don't worry about that right now. We'll do that later. Yeah. So the Bill will handle the handheld, so you don't have to worry about that. They like it on the cell phone, so he'll can do that.
You're gonna start looking like a Christmas tree. You keep hanging all this stuff everywhere. How heavy is that? I don't know. You got a battery, maybe?
that
Carolyn
sentence.
calling?
I talked to her. Then we're gonna go from there to St. Paul.
Okay, so that's where it's going to start. And you see that the Airbnb.
Good morning, Donald. It's been 2 weeks since Minneapolis, St. Paul, and of course the state of Minnesota jointly filing suit to try and end the escalating immigration enforcement here in the Twin Cities. A federal judge at this hour now hearing oral arguments in that case. Here's what we know. Attorneys for Minnesota are going to issue a temporary restraining order. They say that has to happen today. We need to put an end to Operation Metro Surge. We cannot wait any longer. Now, in Mayweather's case, the state says that the federal occupation of more than 3,000 agents, mass agents, has led to racial profiling, illegal detentions, and warrantless entries, calling the immigration surge a violation of the 10th Amendment, which grants judge did ask the state which filed this suit, if the feds have crossed the line, where is that line? The state responding so far, it is so far on the other side of that line, it is hard to know where to begin. The DOJ has called this lawsuit frivolous. They will begin their counter arguments, followed by more questions from the judge. But again, the state is asking for immediate relief. Unclear exactly when the judge will rule on this. Yeah.
Where do you get your top line?
Guy with an iPhone 6 over there, and then we got you.
I feel like if you see like a third player.
You taking us? I might get folded up.
Nope, just adjusting.
back. My security guy's phone is dead.
You want the battery box?
No, I don't need that.
It didn't work. Yep.
To bring down the temperature. To ice, get the f out of Minneapolis. Sure, that's part of my role as mayor. And by the way, protests here in Minneapolis are peaceful.
The desire to get out and protest and to speak up to this administration of how wrong this is, that is a patriotic duty. That is a patriotic duty.
We have had perhaps tens of thousands of people peacefully protesting. Yeah, they are going to stand up for their neighbors.
The human desire to lash out in this moment is very real. And from here on, I have a very simple message. We do not need any further help from the federal government.
Thank you to allfamilypharmacy.com. This is /emergency-kits, so slightly different than the other code, because now you have 20% off, a very generous gift from Michael Kunzler and the great people over at All Family Pharmacy. So scan that QR code now, and you will receive within a matter of days, especially during this snowstorm, one of these guys, an emergency medical kit that can handle the flu. Or if you're traveling on the road, with an emergency medical kit, sinus infection kit, the essentials, and much, much more. Code RSBN20, RSBN20, allfamilypharmacy.com /emergency-kits, 20% off with code RSBN20. We are grateful for this organization. If you've been watching since the top of the broadcast from 11 a.m. Eastern, we replayed that wonderful interview with my colleague Matthew Alvarez, talking to the co-owner Michael Kunzler in depth about these essentials, because when you have storms that have happened with 1 million people losing power over the course of the last several hours, from Texas all the way to Maine and about everywhere in between, 40 states affected out of the 50 in our great state of the Union by this snow and ice storm. And not just water and essential medication and food that you need, but sometimes you can't get to that pharmacy. Sometimes you can't get to the grocery store, and sometimes they simply do not prescribe it. At allfamilypharmacy.com /emergency-kits, they're changing the ball game when it comes to convenience, safety, and making sure you're prepared. Code RSBN20 is the go-to there. Scan that QR code there now. And a great gift for Valentine's Day coming up. Can you believe we're almost, 2.5 weeks from that? Angel Paste, the miracle cream, great for guys and gals out there, especially those busy working professionals. With the vitamin B miracle cream that is good year-round to keep your skin glowing. I use it on a daily basis. It's non-GMO, no chemicals. Also, the orange option, exquisite for this time of year to get that extra vitamin C boost and to help with collagen. It's angelpaste.com. They also have a natural facial spray to paint the town red. So when we thaw from this ice storm, you can go out there and enjoy a night on the town. Paint the town red with angelpaste.com. They're Christian-owned. They hire veterans. They're based out of Spring, Texas, off the Gulf of America. And dear friends of ours here at the network, thank you, angelpaste.com. Experience the miracle that is supporting the right side of history. I had the absolute privilege of speaking with Jim Path recently. This was actually recorded last week and before the Davos, Switzerland meeting for the World Economic Forum, but some good perspective on Congress and what's going to take place in now the second term of the 119th Congress as we lead up to these 2026 midterms. And Jim Path, the president of the Conservative Caucus, always has great analysis, as he has been a man in the arena, marred with the blood, sweat, and tears of what can be the very first article of our constitutional republic, the Congress, a nightmare in and of itself these days, but regarding
waves of protests, and also calls for ICE to get out of the state. Crowds of anti-ICE protesters, they are braving those frigid temperatures in Minneapolis. They are denouncing the way federal officials are labeling Preddy a domestic terrorist, as they put it. A Department of Homeland Security claiming the federal agents shot him out of self-defense. They allege, without providing any evidence, that Preddy, quote, brandished a firearm and attacked their officers. Minneapolis officials say that Preddy was a registered and lawful gun owner, and crucially, that his death was captured on cell phone video from several witnesses, and at no point in any of that footage that's been reviewed by CNN is Preddy seen with a gun in hand. This next video, it shows one angle of Saturday's deadly encounter. A warning, the video is graphic and disturbing. In it, you see Preddy in a baseball hat moving between an agent and a woman federal officers had just shoved to the ground. You see him even trying to assist that woman back up. Before the agents are on him, Preddy is sprayed with a chemical irritant. Officers, a short time later, just seconds later, then opened fire multiple times. As the U.S. continues to grapple with the most recent killing of a U.S. citizen by federal officers, Minnesota Governor Tim Walz held a press conference on Sunday. He appealed directly to the American people by saying that this killing is an inflection point for society, and also posed a very stark question.
I've got a question for all of you. What side do you want to be on? The side of an all-powerful federal government that can kill, injure, menace, and kidnap its citizens off the streets? Or on the side of a nurse at the VA hospital who died bearing witness to such government? We have got children in Minnesota hiding in their houses, afraid to go outside. Many of us grew up reading that story of Anne Frank. Somebody's going to write that children's story about Minnesota. And there's one person who can end this now.
The Border Patrol's commander at large, he continues to cast blame for the deadly shooting directly on Alex Preddy, faulting him for approaching the federal agents. During an interview with CNN's Dana Bash, Greg Bovino pushed back against video analysis that appears to contradict the DHS account of the incident, but he repeatedly declined to provide any evidence at all to back his claims, instead redirecting questions to the federal investigation currently underway.
Dana, you don't know he was unarmed. I don't know he was unarmed. That's freeze frame adjudication of a crime scene via a photo. That's why we have investigators. That's why we have an investigation that is going to answer those questions. How many shots were fired? Who fired shots? Where was the guns? Where were the guns located? All those questions are going to be answered in the investigation. We're not going to adjudicate that here on TV in one freeze frame there. We don't know that agent was taking any gun away. That could have been the agents, because we don't know that. The facts are going to come to light as to what exactly happened with an investigation. That's why we investigate.
So that's the same Border Patrol authority who's saying, wait for the facts, while conclusively saying without evidence that it was Alex himself that was trying to interfere with authorities. CNN's Betsy Klein is at the White House with the latest on the Trump administration's response.
President Trump and his team doubling down on their hardline immigration policies after federal officers' killing of Alex Preddy in Minneapolis, even as this incident is revealing cracks in the president's own coalition. The White House deploying top officials to the airwaves on Sunday, where they defended ICE agents' tactics as well as immigration policies more broadly. They also shifted blame to state and local officials, particularly Minnesota Governor Tim Walz, along with Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Frey, who they say are not doing enough to support federal law enforcement on the ground. President Trump underscoring that message in a post to social media on Sunday evening. He wrote, quote, "Democrats are putting illegal alien criminals over tax-paying, law-abiding citizens, and they have created dangerous circumstances for everyone involved. Tragically, 2 American citizens have lost their lives as a result of this Democrat-ensued chaos." But privately, we are learning that Trump administration officials are concerned about the scenes playing out. And over at the Department of Homeland Security, we are reporting that officials are concerned that Secretary Kristi Noem's handling of this situation is putting federal law enforcement at risk of long-term reputational damage. Now, there are no plans at this time to change their policy posture. ICE for now will remain in Minnesota. The president's hope is that these protests can calm down and that he can go back to touting some of the success that he believes ICE is having in apprehending illegal immigrants. Now, they are getting some rare pushback on this, including from Governor Kevin Stitt of Oklahoma. He told our colleague Dana Bash over the weekend that Americans are asking what is the end game, and that in his view, President Trump is not getting good advice on this. Now, something that was missed Saturday as this story developed is the possibility of a potential off-ramp for federal officials here. We heard this in a letter from Attorney General Pamela Bondi to Governor Tim Walz. She wrote saying that if he repeals sanctuary policies and shares Medicaid, food assistance, and voter data, they could, quote, bring an end to this chaos in Minnesota. Democratic National Committee officials saying that is extortion. Betsy Klein, CNN at the White House.
Back with us is CNN law enforcement contributor and former retired supervisory special agent of the FBI, Steve Moore. Steve, it's good to see you again.
Good to see you.
So, Steve, DHS appears to really be going in circles here, saying that there's an investigation happening while also getting ahead and concluding that Alex Preddy was there, as they put it, to interfere with law enforcement, to carry out a massacre, as they put it yesterday. So if the Trump administration and its Border Patrol officials have evidence to substantiate that, wouldn't they have provided it by now, given that they very quickly posted a photo of the pistol that was recovered?
Well, I certainly can't comment on their mindset, but it would seem to me to be the logical thing to do, and something that they have done in the past. That if you have information or evidence that would tend to show that your side is got the right evidence, then you want to present that right away. And if you don't have it, it begs the question: does it exist?
Then there's a CNN analysis that shows that at least 2 agents involved in the shooting incident, that they appear to be wearing body cameras. And then there's also the fact that that Alex himself was possibly recording it, since we see a phone in his hand. I mean, are you at all hopeful that we may see this footage from those cameras if it exists? Because I remember, if I'm not mistaken, after the shooting of Renee Good, the video that the agent involved was recording was eventually released, or at least it made it into the public eye.
Sure. And I would expect that any evidence that tended to support the federal government's position on this would be released almost immediately. And, you know, they may be able to kind of hang on to it for a little while if they say that, well, these are federal body cameras, therefore the film is evidence, and we're not going to release it until it goes to some kind of legal resolution. I don't think that helps their case. And really, you know, what concerns me right now is that it appears that HSI wants to do the entire investigation themselves, when, in my experience, it's always been the FBI that does the investigation following one of these types of shootings.
And per the latest CNN reporting, there seem to be some growing concerns within DHS and Border Patrol about the way that their leaders are handling this case. You know, as a former federal agent with the FBI, just, you know, in situations like that, how much damage to the reputation of that other agency is potentially being done, given all the controversy swirling around the shooting?
Well, as an FBI agent who's had his agency bashed around by the left and the right for a while, I know that it hurts morale and it hurts the public perception of the agency. And right now, between the federal government, who's doing their best on this subject, to Mayor Fry and Governor Walz, who have all just been giving all law enforcement a black eye, not deploying Minneapolis police. It's just, and then calling ICE agents every name in the book. It is probably the worst time for law enforcement that I've ever seen, when both sides are just spewing venom, most of which is just slander.
And as a seasoned federal officer, you know, it's now midnight in Minneapolis. It is Monday, the beginning of the work week. What would you, after such a difficult weekend, to say the least, in Minneapolis, what would you like to see in the coming days there on the ground?
Yeah, I'd like to see both sides take a step back. I think this would be logical. I know the ICE agents certainly don't look forward to their alarms going off and saying, hey, we're going to go out in the street again, and there's going to be a bunch of people there blowing whistles in our face and jumping in front of us and trying to obstruct what we're doing. And at the same time, if the Minneapolis government would send out their police to put a buffer zone in there, if the governor and the mayor would tone their rhetoric down a little bit, I think that would be the start. But see, then I'm getting into political things. But as a law enforcement officer, what I would want as an agent right now is to be able to step back and do a hot wash on what's been going on and determine, you know, whether we're doing the right thing here. It's kind of like in the military, in aviation, if there's a crash, you do a stand down until you figure out what's going on and do we have a safety issue.
No, without question, that certainly would be ideal to have Governor Walz working with the White House, but it's impossible to avoid the politics here. Do you think that can actually happen, though?
I think it can. I don't think it will. I think there's, it just seems to me, from a law enforcement perspective, I can see how this could be handled in a day. Because I'm certain that the Minneapolis police officers aren't thrilled by what's happening. They would like to. Nobody likes to be on a protest line, but they would like to be out there making their city safer. And the ICE agents are human beings. They have kids. They're people who want to go back to their normal lives. They certainly don't want to be in frozen Minneapolis for the entire winter, getting spat on. They want to do their job, but maybe there's better ways for both sides to do their jobs.
Yeah, but no question, everybody deserves to certainly make it back home at the end of the day, be it some of those law enforcement officers and certainly those people who are just exercising their right to free speech and are taking issue with what they have been seeing on a daily basis. Welcome back to our breaking news coverage of the growing unrest in Minneapolis after the fatal shooting of Alex Preddy by Border Patrol agents. Despite the city's frigid weather, large crowds they are out on the streets and they are calling for the removal of federal agents from their communities. This is coming as the Trump administration really doubles down on its aggressive immigration enforcement tactics. Meanwhile, top white officials, they are still defending the officers' actions during the deadly encounter. They're even blaming Minnesota officials for escalating this crisis. The videos taken by various residents, I should say, on Saturday as Preddy was shot, they paint a very different picture of what actually happened compared to what we're hearing from Department of Homeland Security officials. CNN's Jana Tabani walks us through every one of those frames.
Federal immigration officers fatally shot a man Saturday in Minneapolis. He was an ICU nurse who worked at a local Veteran Affairs hospital, another controversial killing by U.S. immigration agents, and the second U.S. citizen killed this month. CNN analyzed cell phone footage from multiple angles. Taken together, they appear at odds with the Department of Homeland Security's initial claims about the lead-up to officers firing on Alex Preddy. Around 9 a.m. Central, video captures two people approaching a federal immigration officer in front of an unidentified vehicle. The sound of whistles is blaring in the background. Alex Preddy enters the frame here. He's filming an officer interacting with protesters and waving a car through. 15 seconds later, Preddy yells, "Hey, do not push them into the traffic!" In their statement, DHS said that an individual approached officers with, quote, a 9mm semi-automatic handgun. This video seems to show officers approaching Preddy instead of the other way around. We'll see later that Preddy does appear to have had a gun in his waistband, but this video shows he didn't have a gun in his hand, only a phone. Video from this white car shows an up-close angle of a federal immigration officer pushing one protester. Then, 3 seconds later, he pushes Preddy. And then as the camera comes into focus, you see the same federal officer push a third protester with the orange backpack. Preddy raises his hand and turns away, just as the officer sprays him with a chemical irritant. You see Preddy and the other protester trying to help the person with the orange backpack. You can see here an officer pulling Preddy off of this person. 3 more officers join, and then 2 more. Preddy is on the ground under them. One officer in a tan beanie can be seen repeatedly striking Preddy's head with a metal can. You can see an officer in a gray jacket walk into the frame. There isn't a gun in his hand. Seconds later, officers shout. The officer removes a gun from Preddy's belt. The officer steps away from the scene carrying a firearm, seen here in his right hand. Then, gunfire. At least 10 shots ring out. We looked back at the scene from different angles and slowed down the footage. This officer, wearing a black beanie, can be seen drawing his firearm and pointing it in Preddy's direction. We can't see his gun when the first shot is fired, but we can see that this officer fired the second shot. In this angle, you see a second officer also had his gun drawn, and here, he's pointing his weapon at Preddy as we hear gunshots, though it isn't clear if he's the one firing.
What the f***? Did they f***ing kill that guy?
Preddy collapses onto the ground as the officers scatter backwards from around him. The same agent in the black beanie from earlier can be seen firing 5 final shots as Preddy lies there, motionless. Nobody approached his body for 24 seconds. When officers do return to Preddy, they appear to begin searching his body. Video shows that about a minute after Preddy collapsed, immigration officers asked for medical support. When CNN asked DHS about the officer removing the gun before the shooting, DHS repeated their earlier statement, quote, "Officers attempted to disarm the suspect, but the armed suspect violently resisted."
And gun rights advocates, they are weighing in on the administration's claims about the shooting death of Alex Preddy. The Trump administration says that Preddy posed a threat when he scuffled with agents. Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem even claimed that he brandished a weapon without providing any evidence. According to Minneapolis police, though, Preddy was a lawful gun owner with a permit. But as FBI Director Kash Patel told Fox News over the weekend, it was illegal to bring it to the protest.
You cannot bring a firearm loaded with multiple magazines to any sort of protest that you want. It's that simple. You don't have that right to break the law and incite violence.
And there are many disputing that claim. Border Patrol official Greg Bovino says that Preddy's Second Amendment rights, they did not apply in this shooting.
We respect that Second Amendment right, but those rights don't count when you riot and assault, delay, obstruct, and impede law enforcement officers, and most especially when you mean to do that beforehand.
Bill Asaley, the top federal prosecutor in Los Angeles, posted this on social media. If you approach law enforcement with a gun, there's a high likelihood they will be legally justified in shooting you. Don't do it, wrote the prosecutor there. Well, in response, the NRA wrote that his comments are, quote, dangerous and wrong, adding responsible public voices should be awaiting a full investigation, not making generalizations and demonizing law-abiding citizens, which is some rare pushback coming from the gun lobby. But to back up for just a second to what FBI Director Kash Patel said about people not being allowed, not being permitted to bring a firearm loaded with multiple magazines to a protest, you may remember back in 2020, Kyle Rittenhouse, he shot 3 people during protests over racial violence in Kenosha, Wisconsin. In fact, he killed 2 of them. Well, Patel went on a podcast the following year offering to help pay for Rittenhouse's legal fees if he wanted to file a defamation case. Rittenhouse was tried. He was acquitted in November of 2021. Then, of course, there was the attack against the U.S. Capitol on January 6th, where multiple individuals were convicted of carrying loaded weapons, including Christopher Alberts and Lonnie Leroy Kaufman. Well, they were pardoned by President Trump. CNN anchor Anderson Cooper actually spoke with demonstrators in Minneapolis on Sunday. Here's why they say that they're marching in sub-zero freezing temperatures. So here's some of the conversations that Anderson had with those protesters.
What's you out today?
I just want to be with the community. It's so moving. It's beautiful to be a part of this. And I'm just so proud to be a part of this community. And I just want to be here and support people who can't.
Does it make you feel better to be with others in this?
Yes, I think it's time to stop living on social media. I think it's time to be here. Time to show up.
Cool. Thank you. Appreciate it. You hear that a lot from people here, this idea of community. Everybody I have talked to today talks about that. They feel the community rising up. They feel the community voicing, and they feel that there's power in that community. Excuse me, I'm with the CNN. Can I ask you some questions? How you doing?
Yeah.
Okay, hey.
Okay, hi.
My name is Anderson.
Yeah.
Okay. So why did you come out today?
Because what's happening here is completely wrong. It's completely wrong, and we couldn't stomach ourselves if we stayed home.
Yeah.
That's it.
Do you feel, does it help to come out and be with others?
Yes. You know that you're not alone, and you know that other people are as mad as you are and are as willing to fight as you are. So being with people makes a huge difference.
And the killing of Alex Preddy cast a shadow over the NBA on Sunday as the Minnesota Timberwolves hosted the Golden State Warriors. Before tip-off, the Target Center Arena in downtown Minneapolis held a moment of silence in Preddy's honor, calling it tragic. And before the game, the head coaches from both teams were asked about the shooting.
For the second time in less than 3 weeks, we've lost another beloved member of our community in the most unimaginable way. You know, as an organization, we are heartbroken for what we are having to witness and endure and watch, and we just want to extend our thoughts, prayers, and concern for Mr. Preddy's family, all the loved ones, and everyone involved in such a unconscionable situation in a community that we really love, full of people who are by nature peaceful and prideful.
For the city, there's a pall that has been cast over the city. You can feel it, and you know, a lot of people are suffering. Obviously, loss of life is the number one concern. Those families will never get their family members back.
That game was initially scheduled to happen on Saturday, but after the shooting, the league postponed the game to the following day out of safety concerns.
This is CNN Breaking News.
Good morning. It is Monday, January 26th. I'm Audie Cornish. Here is where we begin with breaking news coverage in Minneapolis, where for the second time this month, a federal agent has shot a U.S. citizen to death. Once again, the Trump administration accusing that citizen of being a domestic terrorist. But video evidence in the killing of 37-year-old Alex Preddy appears to contradict that narrative. CNN's Gianna Tabani reviewed the videos. I'm going to warn you ahead of time, there is some footage here that is disturbing.
Around 9 a.m. Central, video captures two people approaching a federal immigration officer in front of an unidentified vehicle. The sound of whistles is blaring in the background. Alex Preddy enters the frame here. He's filming an officer interacting with protesters and waving a car through. 15 seconds later, Preddy yells, "Hey, do not push them into the traffic!" In their statement, DHS said that an individual approached officers with, quote, a 9mm semi-automatic handgun. This video seems to show officers approaching Preddy instead of the other way around. We'll see later that Preddy does appear to have had a gun in his waistband, but this video shows he didn't have a gun in his hand, only a phone. Video from this white car shows an up-close angle of a federal immigration officer pushing one protester. Then, 3 seconds later, he pushes Preddy. And then as the camera comes into focus, you see the same federal officer push a third protester with the orange backpack. Preddy raises his hand and turns away, just as the officer sprays him with a chemical irritant. You see Preddy and the other protester trying to help the person with the orange backpack. You can see here an officer pulling Preddy off of this person. 3 more officers join, and then 2 more. Preddy is on the ground under them. One officer in a tan beanie can be seen repeatedly striking Preddy's head with a metal can. You can see an officer in a gray jacket walk into the frame. There isn't a gun in his hand. Seconds later, officers shout. The officer removes the gun from Preddy's belt. The officer steps away from the scene carrying a firearm, seen here in his right hand. Then, gunfire. At least 10 shots rang out. We looked back at the scene from different angles and slowed down the footage. This officer, wearing a black beanie, can be seen drawing his firearm and pointing it in Preddy's direction. We can't see his gun when the first shot is fired, but we can see that this officer fired the second shot. In this angle, you see a second officer also had his gun drawn, and here he's pointing his weapon at Preddy as we hear gunshots, though it isn't clear if he's the one firing.
What the f? Did they kill that guy?
Preddy collapses onto the ground as the officers scatter backwards from around him. The same agent in the black beanie from earlier can be seen firing 5 final shots as Preddy lies there, motionless. Nobody approached his body for 24 seconds. When officers do return to Preddy, they appear to begin searching his body. Video shows that about a minute after Preddy collapsed, immigration officers asked for medical support.
Joining me now is Juliette Kayyem, CNN national security analyst and former assistant secretary at DHS. Thank you for being with me, Juliette. And I want to play for you Greg Bavino, the Border Patrol commander at large, in just a moment. But first, this video, as we saw the breakdown, is there something in particular that stood out to you about how officers at the scene handled the moment?
I think we have to remember that they created it. I think every time I look at it, I am surprised how quickly it does the opposite of de-escalate. So the situation that they find themselves in, even giving them the benefit of the doubt, or they didn't know what was going on, they in fact created by their approach to Preddy this pile-on that I've seen it. I can't get over every time I see it. At that stage, then, it's just chaos. It is absolutely, no one seems to be in charge. They don't quite know what are they trying to do with him. Then there's this, scream of the gun. The best case scenario for ICE is it was a confused shot that then led to multiple other shots. That's not right. But the problem is that then they came out immediately attacking the victim and saying everything they did was right, which we can see is not true.
Let me jump in here with that.
Our
own Dana Bash had a very striking discussion with the Border Patrol commander, Greg Bavino. And here is the moment where she is asking him some of these questions about what was happening.
You don't know he was unarmed. I don't know he was unarmed. That's freeze frame adjudication of a crime scene via a photo. That's why we have investigators. That's why we have an investigation that is going to answer those questions. How many shots were fired? Who fired shots? Where was the guns? Where were the guns located? All those questions are going to be answered in the investigation. We're not going to adjudicate that here on TV in one freeze frame there.
It was interesting hearing this phrase, freeze frame adjudication. What do you make of how he tried to defend this? At one point, even saying that the sort of real victims were the ICE agents themselves.
Yeah. Well, it's not freeze frame, it's freeze frames. So this is the problem that the department finds itself in is the citizen journalists and citizen videos from multiple viewpoints are unquestionable at this stage. And what's interesting about what he did is, remember, just about 24 hours before, they were completely slandering Mr. Preddy about who he was and the situation that he essentially brought upon himself. They've been trying to unwind that, recognizing that it's not a single freeze frame. It is multiple freeze frames from various perspectives that show a man who is essentially detained and not aggressive, being shot multiple times in the back, as we've now learned. The department cannot have it both ways. It cannot slander the victim and then say, well, we don't actually know. And then when asked questions, we don't actually know what happened. There's going to be this investigation. The investigation, as we now know, does not involve state and locals, at least the federal investigation, and is so I would say worrisome that even a court has stepped in to tell the federal government you cannot tamper with evidence.
New this morning, a source tells CNN the FBI is staffing up a crisis coordination center in Minneapolis. They're looking for employees nationwide to volunteer if they have experience investigating social media. The source says the FBI is hoping to collect better intelligence on the groups protesting federal agents in the city. Videos of the shooting of Alex Pretty have contradicted the government's account of what happened. We could see even more videos, including potentially from the camera that Pretty himself was carrying. With us now, Brian Stelter, CNN's chief media analyst. The video in this story, Brian, is so crucial and is really pushing this story.
Yes, and as our colleague Anderson Cooper has pointed out from Minneapolis, Alex Pretty's phone is likely in border control custody now. There are big questions about whether he was recording, what he was filming at the time, and whether the public will ever get to see that perspective. But we have seen, about half a dozen other points of view of this latest shooting. And just as in the case back on January 7th with Renee Nicole Good, multiple angles, multiple points of view of what happened. In some cases, people reaching different conclusions based on the same video. But there are some signs this time is different. You've been talking about reactions from lawmakers. Look at the reactions in online communities of all sorts. People who usually don't engage in politics weighing in about the Alex Pretty case and expressing condemnation and horror at these videos. Now, here's a headline from the Verge website over the weekend saying, creators and communities everywhere are taking a stand against ICE. Quote, even the most seemingly apolitical creators have had enough. Let's see a month or a year from now if that's actually the case. But it's interesting, in this moment at least, there's so much online energy and outrage, so many people watching the videos, slowing them down, zooming in, really analyzing this case very closely and concluding that the government is lying to them about it.
And look, the nature of this past weekend with the weather, people were in their homes with little to do other than watching videos. This really broke through in ways that other things have not. Right. And Brian, you've also written about video and recording as a form of resistance.
I think that's what we're seeing happen right now in Minnesota, in the same way that we've seen in other countries. Think about Iran recently, for example. Of course, big differences in Minnesota. But I've noticed how Governor Tim Walz and Minnesota officials have been urging residents to hit record whenever they see ICE. In some ways, these on-the-ground videos from Minnesota residents are a rebuttal or a rejoinder to the flashy, militaristic videos that ICE has been producing for months. Videos that many have likened to propaganda, showing the efforts of ICE and Border Control officials. Well, now you have local residents in their own words telling their own stories. At a time when residents might feel powerless, Minnesota officials are saying, hey, the phone in your pocket is a form of power. But at the same time, John, videos are just a starting point. They're not an end point. We've seen many times how seeing is not always believing anymore. People bring their own beliefs and then they choose and see what they want to see. And as the front page of this morning's New York Times puts it, video footage isn't stopping Trump from telling a different story.
No, but videos are a path to the truth when other avenues have dried up. Brian Stelter, great to see you this morning. Thank you very much. Yeah. Brand new hour of CNN News Central starts right now. And the breaking news this morning is the president signaling a shift in Minneapolis. A brand new interview after federal agents shoot and kill a 37-year-old ICU nurse, Alex Pretty. The administration's version of what happened at odds with multiple videos from the scene. Today, crucial court cases about what happens next in the investigation and who handles the evidence. A foot of snow or more across 17 states, close to 1 million people without power, just as deadly cold.
but I guess he wants you to. I don't think it
Yeah, it's incredibly notable, Brianna, and that's partly because I think the president actually pointed this out in his social post this morning that Pullman has not been the one leading these operations on the ground. And so really the face of these operations has been Gregory Zambino, the Border Patrol commander at large, and also the Secretary of Homeland Security, Zambino, and both of them have been publicly out there aggressively defending ICE throughout all of this, and that's part of this. Now, to go back to what you were saying about some of these lawmakers that our colleagues have been talking to, they're saying that they look at Pullman as kind of a grown-up in this situation, and that they were relieved when they were telling her that he is going to Minnesota. We did hear from the White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt this morning saying that he is going to be managing the operation on the ground in Minneapolis. So again, very notable. And I should note here's some context as well. We know that Pullman, despite him being someone who was pushing some of the hardline immigration policies in this administration, many people view him as being less hardline on some of this than Zambino and Nome. And I should also note as well that we've reported that Pullman and Nome have clashed many times in the past. They've been at odds at times over how to handle the administration's crackdown for immigration. And so a lot of big changes here. We're going to have to see if this is really a wider strategy shift that the president is doing by sending him, or what this could mean for both Zambino and he hasn't, and not just Nome, I should say. We heard Nome was the one who said that he had brandished that Al-Qaeda brandished his gun. She also kind of compared him to being a domestic terrorist. We heard the same thing. We heard similar language from Stephen Miller, the president's Homeland Security advisor. We also heard from Zambino saying essentially that Petty was trying to assassinate and massacre the agents on the ground. I want you to listen to what we actually heard from the Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche this morning, speaking to Fox News and arguing essentially that no one is trying to make the case that Freddie was an assassinator. clearly, what William was saying is not in line with what were there from Noam during that press conference on Saturday. There are so many questions still that we were going to need answers for. We're hoping to get some of them soon. When Caroline Levitt comes out here, many of them being why can't we do these conclusions during the investigations that actually be conducted? What evidence do they have for making some of these statements? And so much more. Stay tuned for that. Sorry. About what? No, it's not yet. Yeah. Okay, I don't feel comfortable. Like I feel like you want me to move. I don't want to like if you could. No, I don't want to. I want to. Yes, I can come at it different way if I do status. You know what I mean? Let's meet up and have a conversation. But before else, I feel like if you could find that out. Right. You know, if he's not, it makes it so much different. No, you should. You should reach out. And if he doesn't, but find that out because I can definitely. I'm glad.
No, it's good. Yep. Yes, yeah, I got it.
Okay, thank you.
Carol, did you get buses? I raised it high enough. Yeah, yeah. It can go even higher, but I don't know. I'm ready. First.
Good afternoon, Jackie. Thank you for that. Thanks for coming in on a snow day for the rest of the government in the country. And as much of the country feels the impacts of that winter storm, President Trump continues to monitor the situation closely, and he has remained in constant contact with FEMA and emergency responders. President Trump also quickly approved 12 federal emergency disaster declarations within 24 hours for the states of Arkansas, Georgia, Indiana, Kentucky, Louisiana, Maryland, Mississippi, North Carolina, South Carolina, Tennessee, Virginia, and West Virginia, enabling these states to access critical federal resources to supplement their response efforts if needed. These declarations will help state-led efforts of turning power back on, clearing roads for emergency services, and keeping communities safe. The White House will continue to correspond directly with governors and local officials in the coming days, especially in those states that were harshly impacted by this storm. I would also like to address the chaotic scenes in Minnesota over the weekend. Nobody in the White House, including President Trump, wants to see people getting hurt or killed in America's streets. This includes Renee Good, Alex Preddy, the brave men and women of federal law enforcement, and the many Americans who have been victimized at the hands of illegal alien criminals. Saturday's shooting remains under active investigation by Homeland Security Investigations and the FBI. The Customs and Border Protection is also conducting their own internal review. As President Trump said yesterday, the administration is reviewing everything with respect to the shooting, and we will let that investigation play out. But let's be clear about the circumstances which led to that moment on Saturday. This tragedy occurred as a result of a deliberate and hostile resistance by Democrat leaders in Minnesota. For weeks, Governor Walz and the Mayor Jacob Fry and other elected Democrats were spreading lies about federal law enforcement officers who are risking their lives daily to remove the worst criminal illegal aliens from our streets: murderers, rapists, pedophiles, human traffickers, and gang members. Governor Walz and Mayor Fry have shamefully blocked local and state police from cooperating with ICE, actively inhibiting efforts to arrest violent criminals. They have also used their platforms to encourage left-wing agitators to stalk, record, confront, and obstruct federal officers who are just trying to lawfully perform their duties, which has created dangerous situations threatening both these officers and the general public and Minnesotans alike. This is precisely what unfolded in Minneapolis on Saturday morning. Obstructing federal law enforcement and inciting violence against officers is wrong and illegal. This used to be a universally accepted position in the United States. Amid the hysteria, we must remember how we got here to this moment today and what this Democrat opposition is about. Former President Joe Biden and the Democrats opened America's borders for 4 years, inviting tens of millions of illegal aliens from all over the world to flood into our country. Among them, violent criminals who terrorized American communities and have inflicted devastating, permanent pain and harm on law-abiding Americans and their families. Yet we never saw outrage from Democrats or their allies in the liberal media over these horrifying crimes against U.S. citizens. The pain of American angel families was ignored and dismissed because it undermined the Democrat narrative. Innocent Americans like Jocelyn Nungray, Laken Riley, and Rachel Morin are just a few of the many victims savagely murdered by illegal alien criminals. Earlier this month, an illegal alien from Mexico with a long criminal history who came into our country under Joe Biden's administration threw a baseball-sized stone at a school bus carrying children in New Jersey and fractured the skull of an 8-year-old innocent child. President Trump promised accountability to these American families by securing the border, deporting every illegal alien who has committed crimes, especially and most importantly, violent crimes. Nearly 80 million Americans voted for him to deliver on that very promise, and he is. As the duly elected president, the president is fulfilling the will of the people by arresting and removing these threats from our country in cities from Los Angeles to New York and, yes, Minneapolis. Yet Democrat leaders in Minnesota with sanctuary city policies have actively defied federal immigration law and the will of the people. And as a result of that defiance, 2 Minnesotans have now tragically lost their lives on the streets of Tim Walz's state. It is President Trump's hope and wish and demand for the resistance and chaos to end today. That's why President Trump spoke with Governor Walz directly this morning, and he has outlined a clear and simple path to restoring law and order in Minnesota. Number 1, Governor Walz, Mayor Fry, and all Democrat leaders should turn over all criminal illegal aliens currently incarcerated in their prisons and jails to federal authorities, along with any illegal aliens with active warrants or known criminal histories for immediate deportation. Number 2, state and local law enforcement must agree to turn over all illegal aliens who are arrested by local police. And then thirdly, local police must assist federal law enforcement in apprehending and detaining illegal aliens who are wanted for crimes, especially violent crimes. If Governor Walz and Mayor Fry implement these common sense cooperative measures that I will add have already been implemented in nearly every single other state across the country, Customs and Border Patrol will not be needed to support ICE on the ground in Minnesota. ICE and local law enforcement can peacefully work together as they are effectively doing in so many other states and jurisdictions. Additionally, President Trump is calling on the United States Congress to immediately pass legislation ending sanctuary cities once and for all. American cities should be safe sanctuaries for law-abiding citizens only, not for dangerous illegal alien criminals who broke our nation's laws and do not belong here. We hope Governor Walz will do the right thing and continue to work with President Trump to keep the American people safe following their call this morning. Americans overwhelmingly want exactly what President Trump is delivering: strong borders, and strict immigration enforcement against the worst illegal aliens, of which there are still hundreds of thousands to deport from the interior of our country. The most peaceful way to carry out this vital public safety mission is for Republicans and Democrats to do it together, and for state and local law enforcement to work together with federal law enforcement. We want to let cops be cops. You wouldn't know this continues to be a very popular policy position from the biased media coverage over the course of the last few days. But polling shows huge support for this exact thing President Trump is calling for. More than 80% of Americans favor deporting illegal aliens convicted of violent crimes. A country unable to deport criminals who enter it illegally is no country at all. The open borders agenda of Kamala Harris, Tim Walz, and the Democrats was already on the ballot on November 5th, 2024, and it was resoundingly rejected. President Trump will never back down from his promise to deport violent criminal illegal aliens and make America safe again, and he welcomes all cooperation in that effort. With that, I will answer your questions. And Jordan Conradson, why don't you kick us off today? Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Caroline. Jordan Conradson, Gateway Pundit. I have a few questions. First, with respect to the shooting in Minneapolis, we're seeing massive outrage from mainstream media and the left, but I'm just wondering, where was that outrage when Ashley Babbitt, an Air Force veteran, was executed by Capitol Police Officer Michael Byrd, who she posed no threat to in the U.S. Capitol?
Well, you raised a very important point, which I also believe that I just raised as well in those opening remarks, in that there has no doubt been selective outrage by the liberal biased media in picking and choosing victims and highlighting their stories. And as I've said, President Trump does not want any Americans to lose their lives in the streets of America and in American communities across the country. He believes what happened on Saturday is a tragedy, but every life is equal to President Trump, and that's why the lives of Laken Riley and Jocelyn Nungray continue to matter to him and be an utmost priority to him to this very day. And it's unfortunate that we did not see the same type of sensationalist media coverage over the tragic deaths of those innocent American women and girls across the country as we are in the wake of this tragedy that took place on Saturday. Gabe. Sure, go ahead.
I want to get your response to this. The Arizona Attorney General, just days before this shooting in Minneapolis, she seemingly encouraged rioters to go out, shoot, and kill ICE agents. And I'll quote her here. She said, "If you reasonably believe your life's in danger and you're in the house or in your car or on your property, you can defend yourself with lethal force." And she said that you can't tell if ICE agents are law enforcement or imposters, and it becomes an issue of whether you reasonably believe they were law enforcement. Do you have a response to that, and does the White House believe that she should be held accountable for these remarks?
Such dangerous rhetoric, as I pointed out, is exactly what has brought us to this position today, where you have elected Democrat officials across the country who are encouraging left-wing agitators and crazy people to go out and unlawfully obstruct lawful immigration enforcement. Again, these brave men and women of ICE and Border Patrol and the federal enforcement are just trying to do their jobs to enforce our nation's immigration laws and to go after the worst of the worst in this country. I would encourage everyone in this room, and I would encourage the Arizona Attorney General to look at the video of an ICE agent in Minneapolis. He was approached by left-wing agitators who were honking their horns and were screaming slurs at him. And he rolled down his window and he said, "What are you doing? I am out here trying to catch a child predator, somebody who has convicted crimes against an innocent child, and you are trying to obstruct me from doing my job." This rhetoric against ICE, comparing them to Nazi Gestapo, Donald Trump's police force, is despicable, it is shameful, and it is precisely what has led to the escalation of tensions in Minneapolis and in other places across the country. Gabe, go ahead.
For justifying violence?
I would defer you to the Department of Justice on that.
Thank you, Caroline.
Gabe.
Regarding Minnesota, on Saturday, the Department of Homeland Security posted that Preddy looks like he wanted to do maximum damage and massacre law enforcement. Stephen Miller on Saturday posted that, or called Preddy a would-be assassin. Why did administration officials jump to conclusions before an investigation had even been conducted?
Well, look, this has obviously been a very fluid and fast-moving situation throughout the weekend. As for President Trump, whom I speak for, he has said that he wants to let the investigation continue and let the facts lead in this case.
With regards to the deployment of Tom Homan to Minneapolis, should the deployment of Mr. Homan to Minneapolis be seen as a sign that the president is dissatisfied with how the officials on the ground had handled the incident?
No, Mr. Homan is doing an exceptional job, and he has been working with Secretary Noem and President Trump over the course of the last year. Secretary Noem still has the utmost confidence and trust of the President of the United States, and she's continuing to oversee the entire Department of Homeland Security and all of the immigration enforcement that's taking place across the whole entire country. Of course, Secretary Noem is also in charge of FEMA, and we are in the wake of a brutal winter storm where hundreds of thousands of Americans have been impacted by that. So, Borders Our Homan is in a unique position to drop everything and go to Minnesota to continue having these productive conversations with state and local officials. And I know that he's catching a plane in just a few hours to do just that at the request of the president. Jennifer.
On Saturday's shooting, has the president been briefed, and have you been briefed on specific details of the shooting? How many shots were fired? How many guns discharged? And I mean, did the protesters' gun go off, or only the officers' guns? Do you have any of those details?
Again, the investigation is continuing, Jennifer, and we will let the facts lead, and we will let the facts play out in this investigation. I do know that HSI and FBI are conducting interviews with those that were involved and the agents who were involved in this unfortunate tragedy on Saturday.
Are they keeping the president up to date on all those details?
The president is obviously very much on the ball with respect to this investigation. I think he's made that quite clear with the various statements that you've seen him put out, and also the 4 points that the president has outlined as well to Governor Walz, and to encourage him to cooperate with ICE and with the administration. Mary.
Thanks, Caroline. To follow on Gabe's question, Secretary Noem said Alex Preddy committed an act of domestic terrorism. Stephen Miller labeled Preddy a domestic terrorist. Does the president agree with them?
Look, as I've said, I have not heard the president characterize Mr. Preddy in that way. However, I have heard the president say he wants to let the facts in the investigation lead itself.
Was he alarmed to hear his top officials referring to him in that way, rushing to that judgment?
Danny, go ahead.
Thanks, Caroline. On Stephen Miller's comments, will Stephen Miller be apologising to the family of Alex Preddy for calling him, quote, an assassin who tried to murder federal agents, despite the fact that, as you say, this is still under investigation?
Look, again, this incident remains under investigation, and nobody here at the White House, including the President of the United States, wants to see Americans hurt or killed and losing their lives in American streets. And we mourn for the parents. As a mother myself, of course, I cannot imagine the loss of life, especially losing one's child. And that same empathy from the president goes for the parents of angel families, and parents of victims of illegal alien crime across our country as well. And that's exactly why the president continues to be wholeheartedly committed to deporting the worst of the worst criminals from our country. Why don't we go to the back? Kelly.
Does the president believe that the killing, though, was a mistake? Has he expressed that at all?
Again, the president has said, you know, we have to review it, and this investigation needs to continue, and he's letting the facts of the investigation lead itself.
Body camera footage to be released to the public? Now,
that's not something I've heard the president commit to, so I won't do that from the podium. Sure.
Carrie, how serious is the administration taking allegations that local and state officials in Minnesota are actively coordinating with demonstrators through encrypted or non-encrypted communications, as well as providing government resources to impede immigration enforcement operations?
I'm sorry, Carrie, could you repeat your question?
How serious is the administration taking allegations that local and state Minnesota officials are communicating with demonstrators to basically impede immigration officials?
Well, we've definitely seen active organization amongst these left-wing groups, Carrie, and it is something that I know the FBI and the Department of Justice are looking into. Again, it is illegal to unlawfully obstruct lawful immigration enforcement in this country. And these agitators are making it nearly impossible for ICE to do their jobs and for federal law enforcement to carry out the will of the American people to deport the worst of the worst. I would just encourage everyone to please imagine in this room, all of you come to the White House every day to report on the President of the United States and the administration. You come into this briefing room, you walk through the gates of the White House. Just imagine if there were left-wing agitators or agitators of any kind who were in your face, who were doxing you, who were harassing you, who were physically threatening you, who were biting off your fingers in the case of two Border Patrol agents we saw this past weekend in Minneapolis, that would make it very difficult for you to show up and do your job here at the White House every single day. That's what these officers in Minneapolis are facing. That's why the president is calling on Governor Walz and Mayor Frey for these three very simple and common sense points of cooperation so that ICE and local law enforcement can work together. Again, we are just asking for police to be police. And if you ask any law enforcement agent or official, they want to be able to work with their federal counterparts at the state and local level and vice versa.
Caroline. Thanks a lot, Caroline. Two questions. One is looking forward. The role of Mr. Homan. Is he being sent by the president to diffuse the situation that exists right now on the ground? Is he the point person essentially for the White House in terms of trying to tamp down the tensions that exist right now in Minnesota?
Well, Mr. Homan is the point person for cooperating with state and local authorities and corresponding with them, again, to achieve this level of cooperation to subdue the chaos on the streets of Minneapolis. And I would just point out that Mr. Homan is someone who has been lauded for many, many decades for his experience working in law enforcement. In fact, this is a Washington Post headline from 9 years ago, 2016. Meet the man the White House has honored for deporting illegal immigrants. And I would remind everyone in this room that it was former President Barack Hussein Obama who awarded a medal to Mr. Homan. So he's obviously very qualified. He has the full trust and faith of the president. He will continue to have these meetings in the hopes that ICE and local law enforcement can cooperate and work together to have successful immigration enforcement, as we've seen in almost every other state across the country.
And secondly, Caroline, can you talk a little bit about tomorrow's trip by the president to Iowa, what the purpose of that trip is, and what the goals of that trip are?
Sure, yes. Tomorrow, President Trump will be traveling to Des Moines, Iowa. He will be making a local visit at a local business, and then he will be giving a speech on affordability and on the economy. And I know he very much looks forward to being there, to meeting with the great people of Iowa, but also lawmakers as well. Jake.
Caroline, a couple quick questions. First, does the president remain fully confident in Kristi Noem's ability to lead the DHS?
Yes.
And then just secondly, just on that Wall Street Journal reporting that we saw yesterday, the president said at some point that the immigration enforcement officers would leave Minneapolis. Did the Saturday killing of Alex Preddy expedite that withdrawal at all?
To your first question, the answer is yes. He still has confidence and trust in Secretary Noem. To the second question, I would point you back to what I said earlier. If Governor Walz and Mayor Frey implement these common sense cooperative measures, CBP will no longer be needed to support ICE on the ground in Minnesota. ICE and local law enforcement will peacefully work together, as they are effectively doing in so many other states and jurisdictions, to remove violent criminals from American neighborhoods across the country.
To ask the president to remove the immigration enforcement officers?
He asked the president to scale down, and the president reiterated what the president put out in his statement yesterday and what I'm sharing with all of you as well. I would just add on this level of cooperation a few statistics that I think are very important. 7 of the top 10 safest cities in the United States cooperate with ICE. And we've seen historic turnaround in safety in cities that have chosen to cooperate with ICE, that are not just led by Republicans, but also look right here in Washington, D.C. We had a great level of cooperation with Mayor Bowser and the local government, and we have been able to remove thousands of illegal aliens from the District of Columbia, where you all live. So you can thank President Trump for that. The murder rate in Washington, D.C. has plummeted as a result. There were no riots. There were no protests. Nobody was tragically killed as a result of that level of cooperation between federal and local authorities. And again, that's all the president is asking for in Minnesota. It's totally common sense. Jared, go ahead.
Thank you. Caroline, in this process, you continue to describe the situation in Minneapolis as chaos. Was there any mistake made by Secretary Noem that led the president to send Mr. Homan there?
I'm sorry, I don't understand your question. Did Secretary Noem make a mistake which led to...
If she made any mistake that could lead the president to send Mr. Homan to Minneapolis?
No, as I already mentioned, Mr. Homan has been working alongside Secretary Noem and for the president over the course of the last year. And again, he's uniquely positioned to hop on a flight to Minnesota today to continue this correspondence with state and local authorities, and that's what he's going to be doing. Fran.
Caroline, is it the White House's position that Americans have the right to show up to these ICE operations and film, document, or protest the law enforcement actions?
All Americans have a First Amendment constitutional right, of course. But Americans do not have a constitutional right to impede and obstruct lawful immigration enforcement operations. That is actually a crime, and it's something that we've seen taking place in the streets of Minneapolis, which again is leading to these dangerous circumstances that these federal law enforcement officers have been forced to work within.
Back to the call with Governor Walz this morning, the president described it as respectful. He said we seem to be on a similar wavelength, but you had strong criticism for the governor and the Minneapolis mayor, Jacob Frey, just now. So could you explain the difference in tone between what the president had said in his True Social post and I think some of the criticisms that you just levied from the podium?
Fran, I think the criticisms that I laid out, I'm painting the picture for all of you in this room, are what led to the moment that we are in today, where Governor Walz and President Trump are having a conversation, a constructive and productive conversation to end the chaos and the lawlessness that has taken place in Governor Walz's state. Elena.
Thank you. I had a question. With Homan now going to Minnesota, is Gregory Bovino also going to remain in Minnesota overseeing these ICE operations?
Mr. Bovino is a wonderful man and he's a great professional. He is going to very much continue to lead Customs and Border Patrol throughout and across the country. Mr. Homan will be the main point of contact on the ground in Minneapolis.
And to follow up, given what we've heard from several Trump administration officials, people like Stephen Miller, as people point out, calling him a domestic terrorist, Bovino saying that Preddy was out to massacre law enforcement. Why not require ICE agents to wear body cameras to clear up some of the disputes that we are hearing from witnesses and video footage versus what the administration has been saying?
Well, that's a policy question that I know the policy folks in the building are having with members on Capitol Hill, and I'll leave it to them and the president to make that decision.
And I just have a final question is on, you were talking about the level of cooperation that the president talked about with Governor Walz. Will the administration commit to cooperating with local officials on this investigation into Alex Preddy?
The president spoke about this with Governor Walz and said he would have a discussion about it. He did not make a commitment, and so therefore I won't make that commitment here. I would just remind all of you in the media, because I've seen a lack of reporting on this fact, there are investigations into what took place on Saturday. The Homeland Security investigations and the FBI have teamed up for an investigation, and there's also an internal CBP investigation, an internal review of what is happening on the ground in Minnesota. The president supports those investigations, and as I've said repeatedly, he wants to see them move forward. Phil.
FBI Director Kash Patel said in a Sunday interview, quote, "You cannot bring a firearm loaded with multiple magazines to any sort of protest." Does the president believe the Second Amendment rights remain in effect even when protesting?
The president supports the Second Amendment rights of law-abiding American citizens. Absolutely. There has been no greater supporter or defender of the right to bear arms than President Donald J. Trump. So while Americans have a constitutional right to bear arms, Americans do not have a constitutional right to impede lawful immigration enforcement operations. And any gun owner knows that when you are carrying a weapon, when you are bearing arms and you are confronted by law enforcement, you are raising the assumption of risk and the risk of force being used against you. And again, that's unfortunately what took place on Saturday.
Will his mission continue to be focusing on illegal immigrants with a criminal history, or will it be on illegal immigration generally?
Mr. Holman will continue to enforce our nation's immigration laws, especially deporting the worst of the worst criminals in Minnesota who have committed violent offenses. And I would just remind all of you that this important work is continuing to be carried out. In just the last few days, I'm happy to provide this packet to anyone in the room. ICE has arrested multiple violent criminals, illegal aliens within Minnesota. Many of them have convictions for assault, driving under the influence, fraud. This individual here I'm looking at was an aggravated felon with multiple convictions for larceny, fraud, and forgery of checks, vehicle theft, drug possession, domestic assault, inflicting bodily harm on another, criminal convictions of larceny, identity theft, again, charged with driving under the influence. These are extremely dangerous people. who Governor Walz and Mayor Fry have allowed to roam on their streets. And all the president is asking for is cooperation to arrest individuals like this and deport them from the United States of America. I'll take a couple more. Okay.
Okay, so this weekend the president posted that this is a cover-up of the fraud in the state of Minnesota. He also posted Minnesota is a cover-up. These both happened after the shooting. So given that these came after the shooting, what is the this here? What is the cover-up he's alleged?
Yes, it's a good question. I spoke with the president about this at length. What the president is referring to is the fact that you have Governor Walz and again the mayor who have been encouraging these left-wing agitators to come out and to harass and to dox and to threaten ICE and to make this conversation about and smear lies about federal law enforcement who again are just trying to do their jobs in an attempt to distract from the widespread massive fraud that has taken place in their state. Billions and billions of dollars has been stolen from law-abiding taxpayers in Minnesota, and the administration continues to be very focused on getting to the bottom of it, and especially, and the president raised a good question over the weekend with respect to Congresswoman Ilhan Omar, who now has a net worth within the millions, and one must ask themselves, why and how is that possible? Is she connected to the fraud rings that we have seen taking place within her state and her own district? It's a question the American people are raising, and the president believes it's one worth answering. Haley.
Thanks, Caroline. I want to go back to some of the comments from Stephen Miller and Secretary No. You've made clear the president wants to see the investigation play out when answering some of the questions on the specific details. Is he concerned that some of those definitive statements made by other officials risks public perception of the credibility of those investigations now playing out?
Again, the president believes that these investigations are credible, they are continuing, they are active, and he wants to let them play out. Alex.
Caroline, thank you. Is the administration willing to separate DHS funding from other funding bills in order to avoid a broader shutdown?
Look, at this point, the White House supports the bipartisan work that was done to advance the bipartisan appropriations package, and we want to see that passed. Policy discussions on immigration in Minnesota are happening. Look, the president is leading those discussions as evidenced by his correspondence with Governor Walz this morning, but that should not be at the expense of government funding for the American people, which would include, as you know, Alex, FEMA funding, and we are in the midst of the storm that took place over the weekend, and many Americans are still being impacted by that. So we absolutely do not want to see that funding lapse, and we want the Senate to move forward with passing the bipartisan appropriations package that was negotiated on a bipartisan basis.
Secondly, there's another round of Russia-Ukraine talks this weekend, Sunday. If you can walk us through with the president, how he will be involved in that, if at all. We'll be talking to President Putin, President Zelensky ahead of those meetings.
I'm not tracking any scheduled calls at this point in time. However, the president remains deeply involved, and of course, he's being apprised by his advisors, namely Jared Kushner and Special Envoy Witkoff, on these talks. They had a multilateral meeting this past weekend, which didn't get a ton of coverage, but that was historic in nature, where the president's team has really brought two sides of this war to the table together to move the ball closer towards peace. So the president is not giving up on the peace process. He obviously just met with President Zelensky when we were in Davos, Switzerland, but I'm not tracking any calls scheduled for this week. On one more foreign policy point, I will point out, as you all saw, the last remaining body of the hostages, Israeli hostages in Gaza, has been returned. This is a huge foreign policy feat for the President of the United States, for the state of Israel, and frankly, for the whole world. The president made the impossible possible. And so it's great news for the president, for the United States, for our allies, and also for peace in the Middle East. And I understand that more than 20 new additional countries have also signed up to join the newly established Board of Peace with respect to the rebuilding of Gaza, which is another historic accomplishment for this president. So thank you all very much, and we'll see you in Iowa tomorrow.